Talk a little bit about Big Ten football because, well, I believe that Ohio State is in a moment. One of the things that I really enjoy about talking about college football is who's going to win a national championship. And I submit to you, this is the year for Ohio State to win a national championship, or it's going to be another 3 years before they can rebuild, because even as they lose Chase Young, even as they lost Jeff Hafley, even as they lost Jeff Okudah, they still return an outstanding defense and a particularly potent offense that I believe is going to truly come into its own with one of the best offensive lines in college football and a receiving core that is going to be precocious as all hell. Like, they're going to be really good. But one of the things I really find interesting about preseason football is this series that Athlon Sports does where they get coaches to speak anonymously about programs. And of course, talked a little bit about LSU, talked a little bit about Oklahoma. Now I want to talk a little bit about Ohio State, who, as many of you know, is coming off of a 13-1 season after going 9-0 in Big Ten play. It wasn't really close. They destroyed everybody they saw, and they barely lost the game to Clemson, the Fiesta Bowl, just barely 29-23. If Jeff Okudah's incomplete pass was a fumble or an interception, you're talking about a different game. If Chris Olave doesn't break off his route, you're probably talking about a different game. And yet and still, it took a team that ended up going 29 straight games without a loss to beat that Ohio State team by a mere touchdown. Ryan Day, coming into his second year as the guy, has yet to lose a football game in Big Ten play. Lost his first football game in the college football playoff. Not too shabby. And that's why one coach said they're a favorite to win the conference and national title, and it's for good reason. They're operating at the highest level. They're dominant in every phase of construction. They recruit, develop, and coach better than anyone in the conference and are as good as Alabama or Clemson, to which I say, where's the lie? And that's one of the reasons why they're so exciting to watch now, even as I thought that perhaps when Ryan Day was hired on 2017, 2018 as the quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, and then later promoted, that it was going to be some rough going there, because going from Urban Meyer's basketball on grass, spread offense, clap, run QB power to something that has a little bit more offense through the air was going to be difficult. And yet Ryan Day said, hey, look, one, it ain't broke, so I ain't going to fix it. So I'm going to have a 2,000-yard rusher in the backfield, and I'm going to demonstrate just how good we are late in the season against a Penn State team whose calling card was its defense, that had an All-American linebacker and Mike Parsons on it. Their opening drive against Penn State was 92 yards. They did not attempt a pass. Got to pay dirt. Ridiculously impressive team last year. And even as they lose Master Teague, who was third team all Big Ten, even with J.K. Dobbins rushing for 2,000 yards last year, they add Trey Sermon. They're probably going to get Marcus Crowley back from injury. And then we'll see, right? So if you're looking for a weak spot on the offense, I would say it's actually a tailback, even as the grad transfer and Trey Sermon's coming off of 2,500 plus yards in his career at Oklahoma. And then Garrett Wilson's going to move to the slot, probably going to get CJ Saunders back. And then you're going to have Mookie Cooper, and Julian Fleming is the best wide receiver out of the 2020 class. He's a true freshman. This is going to be the first time that he's actually just committed to playing football. And, of course, Justin Fields is the signal caller, and he's one of the top prospects at quarterback and top vote getter in some polls for winning the Heisman Trophy, even ahead of Trevor Lawrence. And I would add here, Justin Fields was a Heisman finalist last year, while Trevor Lawrence was not. And then defensively, you would expect them to take a step back after losing Jeff Hafley, who took the head coaching job at Boston College, who was also their secondary coach, and who helped basically transform that defense, because he took them off of Shiano difficulty. And then there's Chase Young headhunting. And then there's Jonathan Cooper headhunting. And now they get Sax Harrison to come back into the fold. They get Sean Wade to come back. They're going to be good. I expect Josh Proctor to really compete this year. Baron Browning's going to come into his own. And you get to keep guys like Greg Mattinson, who join up with Kerry Combs, who's coming off of making the playoffs with Tennessee Titans as secondary coach. And all they've done is recruit and recruit and recruit. They are challenging for the best recruiting class in rankings history. I'm excited about their class, but I'm much more excited to see what this defense looks like. As one coach said, they might be a step behind on defense, but they should be able to score points and really hurt your feelings with that offense. They're still the gold standard on recruiting. Nothing has changed there. They're prohibitive favorites to win it all. It's that or bust. And I think that's what I would harp on. Ohio State is at the point where Clemson was in 2016 and in 2018, where Alabama has been since about 2011, where Georgia is right now. They are on the precipice. It's their turn, or so I would assume, to come after people and really demonstrate that what Ohio State football has been about for the past 20 years, which is competing for championships. I would also add in there, they've won a championship in the past 6 years. Oklahoma hasn't won a championship in the past 2 decades, right? As much as we want to talk about how good this conference is here with Texas and Oklahoma, that's really it. But it could be worse because it could be Nebraska. My goodness, what has happened to you, Nebraska? I feel like I was just talking about the game of the century, 1974, yesterday, because I was. And then J.D. Spielman goes into the transfer portal. This is a big deal because he is the 3rd leading receiver in school history at Nebraska, which is a lot like being, the tallest short person in a room, because Nebraska don't really throw the ball like that. That's a Scott Frost deal, right? Bill Callahan tried, it ain't worked that way. Bo Pelini didn't care. He just wanted to play defense and win football games, and that actually worked. And then Mike Riley, in that experience, nobody enjoyed. But what I really am getting flustered with Nebraska is I want them to be good next year, because Nebraska comes to Oklahoma, and I've been excited about that game since it was signed. And I thought that with Scott Frost at the helm, they were going to be good, because I, like you, watched Central Florida go from 0 for 12 to 12-0 and beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl to claim the 2017 national championship. And since he's gotten to Nebraska, it's been heartbreak and heartbreak. Hell, Illinois got bowl eligible last year, while Nebraska lost a heartbreaker to Iowa, who's got its own troubles right now, and didn't make it, going 5-7. I really want Nebraska to be good. But if they are not able to get it together this year, basically in their first 5 games, because they get Central Michigan, they get Cincinnati, they get South Dakota State. Those could be, they could be 3-0, or they get Purdue to start. So they could be 4-0, although Jeff Brom's kids ain't no pushovers, right? They get Rondale Moore back, who's the best non-quarterback nobody's talking about. He just got hurt last year. But they could be 4-0, they could be 0-4. But then in 2021, they might have the toughest schedule in the country. Because along with Oklahoma, they have Michigan State with Mel Tucker in year 2, along with Scotty Hazelton. They got Penn State, they got Minnesota, and they got Ohio State to go along with Michigan. Like, there are no days off for Nebraska football in 21. So if Scott Frost is not able to do something this year, and let's say they have another losing season, which is on the table, if he doesn't get fired, he's surely going to get fired in 21, because I don't see him running through that schedule. Because paying attention to just how recruiting classes have worked and how good these teams have been over the past 5 to 10 years, there's a great argument to be had that it could end up being the worst season Nebraska has had in some time. This, as Ohio State seems to be running that league. Michigan can't punch through because they're in Ohio State's division. Penn State can't punch through because they're in Ohio State's division. And we got Minnesota showing out. On the other hand, they all could be Iowa. Iowa is in worse shape right now because of how they are reacting to protests and what news is coming out of, Des Moines, than almost any other program in the country. Because Ferentz hasn't really had a great explanation for what's going on. He's had a strength coach just doubled down on whether or not he says he did not racially disparage any of his players, even as we've had more than 30 of them come out and say that he did. They're bringing out alumni like George Kittle to talk about this. And they were also one of the first schools to say, we're going to play football. Come June, We're telling our kids, get your butts back here because we're going to play football. And with Kirk Ferentz, we're talking about one of the most revered college football coaches in America today, if for no other reason than he's been doing it for more than 20 years at Iowa. And also he was tapped by Hayden Fry. We can't let that one go, right? We also have with him the highest paid strength coach in America, which would tell you all you need to know. Matter of fact, my favorite story about what is going on in Des Moines has to do with the strength coach. Because what we're getting is Chris Doyle saying, nah, I didn't do anything. And yet Ferentz saying, I believe him when he said he didn't do anything. The part that this is funny about is you had like 13 or 15 players catch rhomboid, which is a condition where you actually break off muscle fibers because you overtrained. And they get into your kidneys and you could die. Ferentz gave his strength coach the Assistant Coach of the Year award that year because of how good a shape his players were in. The line here, man, I thought it was bright. It is not. Apparently for some folks, it's fuzzy. And after 21 years at one place, making millions of dollars, we know who runs Iowa football. All kinds of stories all over the place, but the Big Ten is full of them. PJ Fleck in Minnesota, hello, it's ground zero. Nebraska, having J.D. Spielman go into the portal. Iowa, and how it's dealing with racial diversity and having the conversation about racial diversity. All while we should be focusing on Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, but you know what? He's decided to shut up here lately, so that's been nice. It's been nice. Jim Harbaugh's like, oh, okay, cool, appreciate that. Thank you so much,